I've worked for some incredible bosses. And the one characteristic about all those bosses I would throw out is you have an emotional connection with them. If you get a bunch of people in a room and you say, write down the characteristics of your best people you ever worked for. When you start to look at that list, it's going to be trust. It's going to be, I trusted them. I didn't want to let them down. They cared about me. They cared about soldiers. That's all emotional stuff. People usually don't say, well, they were a great briefer. They were a great tactician.
They had a 350 on their PT test.
It wasn't the PT score. It was this emotional connection, because what happens is when you get a leader like that, you don't want to let them down. And that is when you start to get an organization that can change the world, can accomplish any mission. When you get that team concept. Leaders like, I worked for General Votel when he was a battalion commander in 1st Ranger Battalion. I mean, you did not want to let that guy down.
Wow.
He was an incredible example, set the example. He cared about us. He was tactically confident, all these things, and you did not want to let him down. And if you get a whole organization that doesn't want to let their leaders down and wants to, because you have that emotional connection, that care for each other, you got a great organization.
Welcome to the EQ for Entrepreneurs podcast. Like most business owners, you already know you need good business and marketing strategies to scale and be profitable. But at some point, you've hit the dreaded wall where you feel stuck and frustrated. EQ for Entrepreneurs is for business owners and leaders who are honest enough to admit that they just might be the ones holding their business back and are brave enough to change that.
We're Noble and Kathy, and every week we're having candid conversations about all things emotional intelligence and how growing that has allowed us to get out of our own way and is radically transforming both our businesses and our personal lives. This is the secret sauce strategy for modern entrepreneurs who are tired of hustling without seeing results and want to grow a business and a life that they love.
What is going on, entrepreneurs, leaders, and influencers? I have an amazing privilege to introduce one of my super duper longtime homies, Colonel 06 type, 1 each, Eric Lopez. We're college classmates, and literally we go back 25 years.
Long time.
25 zillion years now, I think, to be accurate. And so they have been able to spend some time with us here in Colorado Springs, and it's been awesome, dude, being able to hang out. And he has had a very, very successful military career, also an entrepreneur. And I'm really excited to share, a lot of his insights and wisdom with you guys, because I really know that it's going to encourage you guys, empower you guys, and equip you all based on where you're at in your leadership journey, in your business journey, in your homeschool journey, wherever you're at in your life right now. I know that this interview is going to add a lot of value to you. So, Big Eric, how did you become Eric Easy Leadership Lopez?
First of all, I've never been on this side of the arm swing. So that was an exciting moment for me.
Nice.
I've seen the arm swing a million times online. Now I'm on this side. It's a wild experience for everybody out there. I'll just tell you.
The arm swing.
So, yeah, I mean, the journey that I've been on, man, probably obviously has really been shaped by the Army. The experiences, the combat deployments, the schools, the places that the Army has sent me, the people I've met, has really helped me to grow and become who I am as a leader. And the Army's just, it's a leadership factory.
Right.
It really is.
Can you share, can you give us your quick Army resume? Just let us know, what have you done?
Sure. Yeah. So graduated from West Point. I was as an infantry officer. and been stationed at 101st twice, 10th Mountain, out at Fort Lewis, 3rd Stryker Brigade, was in the 75th Ranger Regiment, commanded a battalion in 1st Infantry Division, and then the Army said, hey, we got something for you. Career infantryman, we are going to put you into Army recruiting. So my last 2 years, just finished brigade command, and absolutely loved being a brigade commander of, with the mission of recruiting America's finest. And that's really what we did every single day. I'm currently the Chief of Staff of U.S. Army Recruiting Command, so it's been a great journey. I've got a great family. I've been married to Christy for 23 years. You were there at the beginning when it all very first started, and we've got 2 great young men. Ryan is 20 and Nathan is 18. He's a senior in high school, so that's kind of me in a nutshell.
That's great. How long have you been deployed? How many combat tours? What are some of the places you've deployed to?
There's 7 combat tours. A lot of them were short. Did a couple short ones with the Ranger Regiment. And I've been to Iraq twice, Afghanistan 5 times. So kind of a global war on terror baby, and went all the way through. So those were my deployments.
So from a leadership perspective, what has had the most influence in who you've become?
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, it's really the Army in general.
Yeah.
You were there. I mean, we went in at 18 years old, and this is now almost 30 years later, and it's been all these experiences.
Yeah.
And the Army is very deliberate about developing leaders. Like I said, it's a leadership factory. And whether it's the training you go through, whether it's, the very deliberate training they put you through.
Yeah.
In the schoolhouse, you keep going back and forth to the schoolhouse to learn. I got a master's degree. I've been in the Army 22 years. They send you back to the Army War College for a year to learn how to think strategically. You get a master's degree and just think totally different. But all those experiences all the way through is really what has shaped me as a leader.
And how about who now? Have there been some specific leader influences that have really helped develop you or maybe fill in some gaps in your leadership journey?
Well, I'm gonna go a different direction with this one and say, my wife Christy has really been what's shaped me. I mean, because we've been together we've been married for 23 years.
Shout out Christy, what's up?
And anybody who's been married for more than a minute, you learn and develop and grow and change. And she encourages me in certain areas. I encourage her in certain areas. And marriage is about that balance, that yin and yang. So that's been, she's probably had the greatest influence on me.
Yeah.
But I've worked for some incredible bosses. And the one characteristic about all those bosses I would throw out is you have an emotional connection with them. If you get a bunch of people in a room and you say, write down the characteristics of your best people you ever worked for. When you start to look at that list, it's going to be trust. It's going to be, I trusted them. I didn't want to let them down. They cared about me. They cared about soldiers. That's all emotional stuff. People usually don't say, well, they were a great briefer. They were a great tactician.
They had a 350 on their PT.
Yeah, it wasn't the PT score. It was this emotional connection, because what happens is when you get a leader like that, you don't want to let them down. And that is when you start to get an organization that can change the world, can accomplish any mission, when you get that team concept. And leaders like, I worked for General Votel when he was a battalion commander in 1st Ranger Battalion. I mean, you did not want to let that guy down.
Wow.
He was an incredible example, set the example. He cared about us. He was tactically confident, all these things, and you did not want to let him down. And if you get a whole organization that doesn't want to let their leaders down and wants to, because you have that emotional connection, that care for each other, you got a great organization.
Wow. That's a great perspective. And so let me go off a little bit and say, how do you do that? How do you create, as a leader,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, as an influencer, how can you create that emotional connection with the end state that ultimately what that does, like you said, is it brings everybody up. Another way to say it would be it brings the best out of everybody.
Right.
So when you have everybody operating at their optimal human performance, man, what can that organization do?
Right.
So how do you create the trust? How do you create the safety? What are some, and I know there's books on this, but what are some things that you have noticed or observed or been able to implement yourself to do that?
Yeah. I got one simple answer. You got to care before you challenge.
Okay, but what does that mean?
So
what does care mean?
you got to care about somebody before you challenge.
So I love the concept, but now
how you care about somebody is, first of all, you got to get to know them. You got to talk to them. That's probably number one, right? Take the time to talk to somebody, get to know who they are, get to know where they're at, get to know about their family, get to know about their finances, get to know about their goals.
That's what makes them tick.
That's it.
Yeah.
And Army, we have a way to do it. It's called counseling. It's this process. It's monthly counseling between the leader and the subordinate. And a lot of people, they go, hey, you got to do this, you got to do this. Those are all the challenges. But somebody's got to know you care about them before you tell them, hey, I want you to get 280 on the PT test. I want you to shoot marksman. I want you to shoot expert. We're going to do this. We're going to do the A, B, C, D like
yeah. The way I've heard John Maxwell say it is you have to connect before you pull. You got to connect
for sure
first, right? And I've heard this one too since I was in. People, soldiers don't care. People don't care how much you know until they know how much you care.
Exactly.
and like you said, that's neat that you made that connection. It sounds cheesy, but the reality is, if I don't feel like my leader, commander, boss, CEO doesn't care about me, which you said is an emotional connection, dude, you will get the minimum required effort from me. I mean, I'm going to still do my best and whatever, but I would be able to perform. I would probably perform even subconsciously at a higher level if I know, no man, Eric, CEO Lopez, whatever, actually cares about me as a person.
And it's hard because that takes time. And it takes time that doesn't directly contribute to the bottom line. It really does, but if you're in a sales organization and you're taking all this time to really get to know somebody and get that emotional connection, you're not talking about sales, they're not making phone calls, they're not on the road, they're not, you're not giving them goals to hit. So it takes time, but that time you spend is worth it.
Yeah.
Is worth it because you get so much more out of that person, and they start to understand what the team is about and that team connection.
That's right. It's because I've been a part of both military organizations and business organizations that because of the pressure of, creating an return on investment or whatever, filling the bottom line, that kind of thing, that person becomes a widget. And ultimately, what is your production? Like, not how are you doing,
right? But
what is your production? And you're right, directly, well, at this point, I can tell, Colonel Lopez or, Mr. Lopez cares about me. And now that impacted the bottom line by $175,000. That's tough to make.
Hard.
Right. So as a metrics or KPI guy, key performance indicators, it's tough. And so, I don't care about just get the numbers, get the soldiers in or get the high schoolers in, that kind of thing. But the reality is it does impact the bottom line.
Right.
It absolutely impacts the bottom line. It's just more challenging. Not to say that it's impossible, but it's just more challenging to make that connection between the emotional connection and the bottom line. But it absolutely exists.
Yes.
Because every organization, regardless of the widget, recruiting, business, whatever, is people. We're all in the people business ultimately, regardless if you're tech, whatever you're in, it's ultimately comes down to we are in a people business. Okay, so I love that. So care before you challenge. And how do you show that you care? By spending time with somebody. In the Army, one way to do that, of course, is spending time. That applies across the board. But then counseling, and in the business world, there are very similar things as well, counseling and that kind of thing. But it's so this would be a question and a challenge for you all is, but I care about you before I challenge you. is how can you, as a leader, as an influencer, how can you practically show and demonstrate that you care to the people that you're leading? So maybe you need a cheat sheet of questions. Maybe stick it in your phone, stick it on a 3x5 card, laminate it. What are the 5 questions you want to ask all the people that you're leading or influencing? What are the 10 questions that you ask? How often should you be asking these questions? Because it's not, what I have noticed, Eric, is care is not a one and done.
Yeah.
Oh, see, I did it. Look, I got my check block. Oh, this
now hit all the numbers.
Right. And then I never ask you again about how you're doing. Care is something that you need to demonstrate consistently over a period of time. And not, when I say consistently, not like, hey, look, I do it once a year. No, I feel like it's got to be, daily, weekly, monthly kind of thing. Depending on your level, obviously, if you're at your level, it's not like you're asking, the newest guy every day. But even at your level, once here, but consistently, I guess is my point. Consistently, you demonstrate care. So think about some questions that you can ask to demonstrate to your folks that you're leading and influencing and stuff that you genuinely care about them. And something that I've noticed too about some really great leaders is when I do talk to them again, they remember our previous conversation.
Sure.
Versus like, okay, what was your name again?
Yeah.
What are you? Which unit? Dude, like, I'm in your company. I'm in your, like, what do you mean? Like, you know what I mean? So to remember, and a lot of times what I would do when I was a platoon leader, and even since in my business career, I would keep 3x5 cards on all the folks that I was leading, and I would keep those. And before I'd come and sit down with you, I would review, oh, okay, great, Eric and Christy, boom, the kids, where you're from, all that stuff. Maybe what your interests are, hobbies, passions, that kind of thing. And that way I can bring them up in that conversation.
Yeah, there's going to be little forcing functions. If it's important to you, you got to have a forcing function to force you to do it, because it's always going to be the first thing you forget. So for you, you had the 3x5 cards. For me, as a brigade commander, I had a long drive home every day. So I would have every other week, I would get a list of heroes of the battle, just recruiters, soldiers that were doing a great job. And I would just, hey, put in there their name, put in their phone number, and put in there what they did. And on the way home, I would just call them. So I was calling down from the 06 level down to the staff sergeant level. And, they're always like, who is this? I'm like, Colonel Lopez, you're a brigade commander. Do you know who I am? Have you heard of me before? Okay. I'm calling you because, hey, you're doing a great job. You put 4 people in the Army this month. You started this new program. And then you're not just connecting with them. Of course, they're going to hang up and go, hey, I was a brigade commander. You just called me. So that was a forcing function. Every 2 weeks, I made those calls, and I loved it.
How'd that make them feel?
They liked it, And I would also say, hey, what's going on? Tell me something. I had 270 recruiting stations across the whole Midwest. I couldn't be everywhere. So, hey, tell me what's going on. Tell me a problem that you need solved by our higher headquarters. But it was that forcing function I had in my calendar that I was going to regularly do it. Another one was when I was at Fort Campbell, I was the deputy commander of 2nd Brigade, 101st Strike. And, you're busy, right? So, but you got PT every day for an hour and a half. So I would do physical fitness almost every morning with a different subordinate. And they would just trot along beside me, doing my little slow run, and I would have those conversations, talk to them. What's going on? How you doing? How's your family? What's this? And then we'd get to the business stuff as well. But that was a forcing function in my calendar to use that time to make that connection, to care about people, so that we could challenge the organization.
That's huge. And something else I've heard, so I love that last point that you made, that you've taken a lot of leaders on runs and stuff. It seems like there are a number of men and women that respond or feel more comfortable in a space where they're doing something. So if you can do something with, somebody else.
It's hard to kind of shuffle into your office and they're looking around and they're like, oh my God, big table and everything. And then they sit down and you're having a one-to-one. So if you can do something together, that's a great idea.
Because that changes the environment. Environment matters, #. Boom. Because you're right. You walk into the boss's office, big scary desk, all the awards and plaques from all your zillion years in the military. So if you can soften that environment up a little bit, again, emotions, this stuff it impacts the dynamic and the freedom and the safety and the trust so that they can buy into you as a leader and that kind of thing. And ultimately so that you as the leader can bring the best out of them. So it's really a win-win, this whole concept and stuff that we're talking about. So you've mentioned it. So indirectly you've mentioned it, but let me just ask it point blank, and you may just say, hey, it's all the stuff we've been saying, which is fine. How has EQ, how has emotional intelligence or emotional health impacted you and your journey as a leader?
It's had a huge impact. This business that I'm in is an emotional business. What we do is incredibly emotional. When you put somebody in the Army, I put 4 people in the Army in 2 years, myself. And one young man, I walked up to him at the Taste of Chicago. And I said, young man, we need people like you in the Army. You should be leading America's finest. He's a young African-American, kid, 19 years old, cutting lawns. And he told me later, I still keep in touch with him. He's like, you changed my life. You turned, I was going one direction, I'm going a totally different direction. He's at Fort Stewart now, infantry guy, went infantry, and that's an emotional connection. You talk about combat, and it's visceral. It's, we're in this business of working with people as a team to accomplish a tough mission in a strenuous environment. So acting like emotions aren't important is ridiculous, and we have to be connected with that. We have to talk about it. So it's been vitally important through my career, and I like to think I've been real. People will think he's real. When I did my farewells, when I left Brigade Command, I did 8 phone calls, 1 with each battalion. I cried on all 8 for 8, because you think about, man, what these recruiters are out there doing every day. The mission is very tough, and the stuff they do every day is absolutely incredible. And that, I think you've asked people who work for me, they say Lopez is a pretty emotional guy, pretty in touch with his emotions, and not scared to share that, because it's for the betterment of the organization. People don't want the T-1000, the Terminator, machine that just, they want that connection,
right?
That emotional connection is what we talked about in the beginning. When you think about, man, that's a great leader,
right? and I love what you said is that, as human beings, sometimes we get caught up in human doings instead of human beings. And there is not a human being on the planet that doesn't have feelings and emotions. Now, like me, some of you may be like me, where you're not in touch with your feelings and emotions. You may not be aware of your feelings and emotions, but la-di-da-di, everybody has feelings and emotions. That was a little sapper school for you there. So knowing that we all have them, and especially, in a military environment, whether it's combat or recruiting, military period, and I was in and out before we had any wars going on, so a long time ago. Still, it's being in the military is a significant emotional event, and then obviously just elevate that the more intense the environment is. So sure. Combat obviously is a whole magnitudes. Well, also the business environment. The business environment can be very, very intense. and very high pressure, and law enforcement. I've got law enforcement buddies, prior military, that kind of thing, and not prior military, just law enforcement that have been, law enforcement officers, LEOs for a number of years. And I've asked them, how do you handle the stuff that you see and experience emotionally? How do you? They're like, dude, we can't. There's no time for that. And here's the other dynamic that's really, really unfortunate and sad for the LEOs out there and for a lot of military folks. And at least when I was in as an infantry guy, the infantry did not care a whole lot about how you're feeling. You know what I mean? That was not at Ranger school. Hey, so Ranger Gibbons, how you feeling right now? Right? That was not one of the questions in my patrol checklist. And so, the culture for law enforcement officers, for military, at least when I was in, was not conducive. It was not supportive of giving you tools and equipping you and empowering you to get emotionally healthy. And some of those cops I've talked to said, we see, man, what they say. One of them told me, one of my friends, she's been a cop in Minneapolis for 5 years. And she said, no, we see in a 4-month time period what most people see in their lifetime.
Sure.
And there may be 10 emotional events that they see in a day. So how do they write the note? She's like, and my other buddies too, like, there's no equipping. We don't, again, the culture, like if you go see a counselor, therapist, whatever, like that's totally frowned upon, which I think is not, that's not healthy. That's not a good idea when we're all emotional beings. And then you start compiling and compounding these emotional injuries. That's going to, at some point, it's going to show up like it did in my life. Okay. So I love what you were saying there. A lot of awesome thoughts there. So kind of dovetailing into this next part here, can you give me an example of what does an emotionally healthy leader look like? What does an unhealthy emotional leader look like, or a leader who's emotionally unhealthy? Can you give me an example? I'm sure you've probably had examples of both in your career.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's all about trust. And a healthy leader is going to take the steps to establish trust among the whole organization. Because when the whole organization trusts each other, you can leap forward on what you're able to do. Because now you can decentralize more, you can empower more, you can give people the authority to take the initiative. But if you don't have trust, you can't do that. So I think healthy leaders are going to take steps to build trust.
Okay, so give me the practical. What does that mean? Again, I'm a new leader, or I'm struggling leader, like entrepreneur. So I like briefs well, but like, what does that even mean? What are the steps, or what are some steps to build trust in an organization?
I think one of them is to be vulnerable. And for me, as a battalion commander, I got my whole infantry battalion and shared my experience of going to see behavioral health myself when I got back from my 5th deployment, when I got back from Iraq, 13 months. Wow. And I would say there is no stigma in this organization with seeking behavioral health, mental health, counseling, whatever you want to call it. If I can do it as an 05, anybody in here can do it. So don't tell me there's a stigma in 2nd Battalion, 2nd Infantry Regiment, because there's not. I'm telling all you right now, if you need help, go get help. And I was vulnerable. I was real. I shared with them something that is probably perceived as a weakness, but is just part of the emotional taxation that has on us when we deploy. So, look for opportunities to be vulnerable. You don't have to be the person in the White Castle that everything's perfect and everything's great. You can show that vulnerability in meetings. You can you can share with people when you're doing those one-on-ones. Well, hey, this is what happened with me. And when you start to do that, you build trust. Another way to build trust is to do hard things together. Because when you do hard things together, whether it's training, or whether it's a shared experience, or whether it's something you do naturally in your business, you're going to have to trust each other to go through it. And that's a lot of what the Army does in Army training, is they push you through really hard situations where I got to rely on my Ranger buddy to get me through, because I can't do it myself. Now I trust him, and he trusts her, and she trusts her, and now we trust each other, and now you got a healthy organization. So a leader that can show vulnerability and develop training to force that to happen, or to encourage that to happen, those are some ways to be a emotionally healthy leader. The contrast is somebody who does the opposite, who puts people competing against each other. You know, hey man, Lopez has got more sales than you. You better pick it up. So then you're cutting his throat to try to get the next sale. That's an unhealthy leader, an example. Or who's never vulnerable. Oh wow, I would never go see help. If you see help, you're a wimp, right? You know, and then you just, now the whole organization, man, no one's gonna go like get help.
Man, such huge points, Eric. So one thing I want to hit is, there is no such thing as the man or woman in the castle that has no issues.
Right.
So let's start there, right? You know, even though there are some that maybe like to convey that, or I've one of the things that I heard early on in my military career and prior to while I was in college, never let your soldiers see you sweat, which I thought was absolutely ridiculous. Because I'm like, but they can actually see me sweat. So why would I fake it? Like, oh, these droplets are actually, I'm spraying myself with, right? Yeah. And so what I have found is, in my career, when business and military and stuff, when I have like share, it's almost the opposite of what the perception is. So, where a weakness is perceived as a weakness, I have found the opposite. That when you share a weakness, it's actually perceived like it builds more. Like you said, it builds more trust, almost as a strength, a leadership strength when you are vulnerable. But if you act like you're this untouchable, unfazable, unflinchable leader, number one, they know you're full of crap. And number two, it completely starts building walls between you and your organization. And so I think that was a huge point. And then another huge point is I love that concept of doing hard things together as an organization alongside your organization, so they can see you sweat. Like, it's almost like create situations and scenarios for them to see you sweat,
right?
To see how you handle it. Do you freak out? Do you cave? Always taking a couple deep breaths. For me, when I see a leader's scars, or I see some weaknesses, like for me, now I know this may not be everybody, for me, I buy into them more.
Yeah.
Even just you saying, man, I've had 7 deployments. Like, wow, that's already like, dude, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Like, thank you for what you have done for our career, our families, our country, the soldiers that you've led.
Let me add one more. You made me think of one more kind of thing to build trust, and that is be competent.
Yeah.
You have to be competent at your job for people to trust you. If you're incompetent at your job, you're an unhealthy leader, because you're asking people to do things that you can't do.
Okay, so let me see how you respond to this. But so what do you do as that brand new second lieutenant, that brand new E5, that brand new entrepreneur CEO?
Yeah.
Dude, I'm second lieutenant. I'm completely incompetent. Brand new entrepreneur, and here's the thing: is this is actually really happening right now. So we're starting a new business, EQ for entrepreneurs, and it's not just for entrepreneurs; it's for everybody. And I think those of y'all that have been following the podcast for a while know that. But I am like, I don't have a PhD in EQ.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So how do you, does that mean?
I got it, yeah. Be good at what you're supposed to be good at. So you're a new lieutenant. You better be very physically fit. And you better know how to do an op order. Right? You've been through infantry basic training. You've been through Ranger School. You don't have to have the answers to everything. But the stuff that's written in the book that you got trained on, you should probably know that. So they're not going to expect you to know everything, but you better be good at what you're supposed to be good at, which is, and so for a new business owner, I would say, you're not going to be good at 100 things, but figure out, man, I better be good at these 3 things. And for me, for lieutenants, I tell them, you better be physically fit. You better have your counseling all done to counsel all your folks that work for you. And you better, if you go to the field on day 1, you better know how to give an operations order, because that is your job. There is nobody else in the platoon that's supposed to have that job. That is your job. And if you're good at those 3 things as a lieutenant, you're gonna be respected, because they're looking at him and go, man, LT is in the front of the run. LT is in the top half of the guys when we're road marching. A lieutenant can climb a rope. It's like,
yeah.
It's not that much to ask. Now they don't expect you to know everything because you're brand new, but you better know those couple of things that you should probably know.
Yeah, that's good. And I would say maybe the other thing I would throw in there is, and also be very clear on what you're not good at.
Sure.
So I told my platoon on day 1, okay, guys, so check this out. I know a bunch of you guys are going to try and smoke me on a run. Let me tell you how that's going to turn out right now, right? You will smoke me on a run. Now I told him, I said, I won't stop running, but you will run circles around me, because all this real estate is not doing 5-minute miles.
Right.
Now I said, now road marching, give me a 100-pound rucksack and the 240 Bravo and the ammo and all that stuff. I got you. All got you. So and they respected me for that. They're like, okay, he's not going to try and fake it like I can run, because I can't fake it. Like, so I love that. So be good at what you're supposed to be good at, or a few things. Now, as an entrepreneur, it's a little challenging, because, I say this analogy all the time is, as an entrepreneur, you're jumping and then building the airplane on the way down, and you don't know how to build an airplane. You don't know engineering, physics, mechanics. I mean, there's so many things that you're figuring out as an entrepreneur.
But I would say you still got to be deliberate, and you still got to prioritize.
Right, sure.
It doesn't matter what field you're in. You can run like crazy and just react, and you can be successful.
Yeah, sure.
You can. In the Army, in business, you can.
Yeah.
But the people in that top 10% take the time to think and deliberately prioritize.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure. I got 1 to 100 I got to do, but you know what? I'm going to do 1 to 5, and these are those 5 things, and I'm going to do them right. And then you gotta, next week, it changed. I'm an entrepreneur. The battlefield changed. Some new thing came out. Whoop! I got another 5, but taking the time to be deliberate and to prioritize, very uncommon.
Yeah,
with leaders.
Well, and the other thing that you said, in addition to be deliberate and prioritize, is the thinking piece.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of entrepreneurs that they just, again, it's so easy to get caught up in the doing, because there's 875 tasks to do. So it's just easier. And a lot of times the task is easier than the thinking. And so a lot,
100%. People would rather execute than think, because it's much harder. It takes much more energy to think. When I went to my longest deployment in Iraq for 13 months, we had thinking time. Again, forcing function. We had a forcing function on the calendar. Sundays at 2, nothing's going on. And we're going to get select staff members, and we're just going to think. We're just going to get on a whiteboard, and we're just going to talk, and we're going to brainstorm. We're not going to answer the phone or nothing. And that's our thinking time. And the amount, and you know what? We're going to have all ranks in there. We're going to have private, specialist, lieutenant, major, and we're just going to cuss and discuss. And the things that came out of that, the ideas that came out of that ended up going all the way to the brigade commander and going into action was amazing. We had a book club on deployment, and we read books that were going to help us think about the problem set. But if you don't take the time to do that, you could just, if you're in deployment, you could execute the whole time. But the real trick is to be a thinker and to think ahead and be deliberate and then prioritize.
That is massive. Love that. Be intentional about the thinking and reflection time. So this would be a question. So for me as an entrepreneur, I'm always thinking in systems and processes. Can I create a system for that? Can I create a process for that? Especially when, again, thinking does not come, this is going to sound funny, but I really think it's true. I don't think thinking comes naturally for a lot of people because it's difficult. So what are some systems and processes that I can put in place to create higher quality, more consistent results and outcomes of the thinking that I do? Did you guys have systems that you used? Like I loved, like one example is you had all ranks in there, so that's one system. Was there a format that you guys used?
Well, so the Army has a pamphlet for everything, right? A training manual for everything. So Army had something called design methodology, and of course the Army overcomplicated it, and it had all 15 steps. But really, what it boiled down to is understand the environment, define the problem, then come up with a solution. Now, a little bit of the thinking that goes into that is you start by saying, I don't know what to do. What any person admits, let me start this process by saying, I don't know what to do. Mm-hmm. So start with, I don't know what to do. Take the time to understand the environment, all echelons, left, right, up, down, all echelons of the environment. Then start to define and scope the problem. And then make sure now you're solving the problem that needed to be solved. Some of my mistakes I made in my earlier deployments, I was solving problems that didn't need to be solved. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I learned design before battalion command that really helped me. That was a system that we went through. And then you don't just do it once. A couple months later, you look at yourselves and you go, okay, what's changed in the environment? What's changed in our problem? So what's our solution going to change? What our operations are going to adjust? So that Army design methodology, I'm a huge believer in it. And that's a system that helps you to think through and solve problems.
That's excellent. I remember our buddy Rob Salome.
Oh, he's the design master.
Big Rob Salome. If you ever hear this, man, thank you for turning me on to design thinking. That was game changer for sure. And if you're not familiar with that, I definitely encourage you to check it out because it is a fascinating, non-linear way of solving problems that seems to be able to get a lot of results for people. So that's excellent. That was great. Love that point. Okay, what are your strengths?
My strengths, I think my number one strength is that I can get the most out of people. I love taking the JV player that was pushed aside, they can't do that, and making them play like a varsity player. And you know how you do it? You give them responsibility and you empower them. I've seen lieutenants that were pushed out of other units. They can't handle, we don't want them in this organization. I'll take them. And you know what? I'll put them in charge of something big, build that trust, care about them, and these people and empower them. And then they just shock the world.
Wow.
You come in and you're like, why are you calling the Corps headquarters, man? You are a lieutenant. You're calling a 3-star. Sir, I got to get this done. You told me, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, okay, all right. I'd rather pull you back than push you forward. So that's probably one of my biggest strengths is getting the most out of subordinates. And then the follow-on strength is just being a mentor. Mm-hmm. People that have worked for me know if they send me an email or a text or I will always answer the phone if it's them. If they send me a text, I'm texting them back within minutes, seconds or minutes. If they send me an email, usually when an email hits my box, I call them. And they know that, just very loyal to people that have worked for me, that have walked a mile in my shoes. And being a mentor is probably my second, follow-on biggest strength.
That's excellent. Huge, huge, massive qualities as a leader. That's awesome. I love that. And I would agree 100%. As being on the receiving end of your strengths, I would 100% agree with that. What are some areas that, let's say, so the 4 areas of emotional intelligence are self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, social management. Which one of those do you feel you need to work on the most?
I'm not sure. You can tell me where this falls into, which one of the 4. But I definitely need to take more time with individuals. So when somebody comes into my office, I'll be looking at them, but then this eye will be looking at my email, and then like in the middle of the conversation, I'll start, let me see if I can get this email sent real quick. Just give me one. Okay, what'd you say? And then I'll start peeking back over. So when you get to that level as a senior colonel, you have a lot of things on your plate. So calling that time out and stopping and sitting down with somebody, no matter who they are, GS5 or an E5 staff sergeant, whatever it is, sitting down and being able to connect and taking the time for individuals. I think as I've gone along in my career, I've been more and more guilty of that, because just like everybody, you're busy, in recruiting, it's just, you're just going, like, what do we got today? Like, let's go, we got to get more. What about this? What about this? What about this? You just want to go to try to hit the numbers you got to hit the goals. And it's hard to stop and focus on individuals. So that would probably be something I need to work on.
So that would be a combination of self-awareness, but then not just being self-aware of it, but now being able to manage. So that'd be self-management also. And I agree. Entrepreneur, again, is so easy to, I've got, again, these zillion tasks, and then the very essence of your business, which is people, you tend to, okay, right. And a lot of times what I've noticed is, who are the people that tend to get overlooked? The busier we get, a lot of times are those closest to us. It could be your spouse, it could be your children, it could be your immediate staff, that they're getting the leftovers. And a lot of times that should be the folks who are investing a lot into. So that's great. That's great awareness of that area that maybe you can work on. Okay, so wrapping up here, any final thoughts or advice or encouragement? Maybe the questions that I maybe didn't ask that you still have some more stuff you want to share.
I think one of them would be, you can't lead other people unless you can lead yourself first. And that's probably the biggest cliche in the Army, is lead by example. Something everybody says, I gotta lead by example. Well, what does that really mean? And this is where the emotional intelligence comes in, the self-awareness, the self-management. You cannot lead other people. You can't lead a healthy organization if you can't lead yourself. You have to be able to see yourself. You have to be able to understand your own strengths and weaknesses to be able to lead by example, to be able to show your subordinates, your employees, what you want them to do. But that idea of leading by example is so important, and a lot of us get so caught up with the organization that we forget to look here, and that's why emotional intelligence is so important. That you got to start here. Can you lead yourself, and then from that emotional connection is going to grow. Your ability to influence your subordinates, your ability to have a relationship with them, to build that trust, to get to the empowerment. So you get an organization that's now, it's not structured where well, this layer does this and this layer down to here, but now everything moves faster because you've empowered people to make decisions because you trust them. You've given clear guidance, and they can take the initiative on your own. And this part of the business is taking their initiative, this part of the business, this part of the business, all inside that overall guidance coming from you as the leader. But you can't do any of that if you can't lead by example, if you can't lead yourself first.
That's great. Love that. Owning yourself, not just owning your organization, taking ownership of yourself, not just owning your organization. One thing that I've noticed, in fact, let me use a book example to further jump on that point you just shared. There's a great book that a retired Sergeant Major shared with me. It's called Leadership and Self-Deception. Leadership and Self-Deception. Strongly recommend reading it. And in there, they surveyed 10,000 executives from a company, this big, massive company. 10,000 executives. 90% of them rated themselves in the top 5% of the company.
Yeah.
And these are leaders.
Yeah.
Leadership and self-deception. So you may think, well, man, man, are you kidding me, Eric? Dude, I lead myself awesome. Like 300 plus PT test. I've got one block my whole career. Okay, that's a piece of it. That's a piece of it. But are you aware of how you come across to people? Are you aware of how you communicate to people? Are you aware of your nonverbals? The majority of communication are nonverbals. What's the vibe you're putting off? What's your environment? What's the culture that you as a leader are creating or continuing in your organization? And you're right, it because that takes thinking. It really, well, man, how because here's what I've noticed too, intentions don't equal outcomes. It doesn't equal reality a lot of times. I love everybody. I intend well. I mean well.
My current boss says talking ain't fighting. So you can do a lot of that, but people are going to look at your actions.
Boom. Yeah. And yeah, that's exactly right. So I love that. Owning yourself first, leading yourself first, which includes that self-awareness and self-management. And here's the other thing too about EQ I'll share is that you may be great at one, but not at the other. So you may, well, man, I'm the most disciplined person on the planet. Self-management, you kidding me? I rock that. Yeah. But how self-aware are you? Just because you are disciplined does not equate to you're self-aware. So love that point. And I feel like what you said too in the interview, the more you can get in touch with who you are, what makes you tick, and you become secure in who you are as an individual, then you can be more authentic and more integrous, where your actions and your words, the music and the lyrics all line up. And now people like to follow that. And you can be transparent without, this is another recovering people pleaser addiction here, addict that I have been most of my whole life, is now I don't need your approval when I'm vulnerable. So I can be vulnerable and say, hey, Eric, man, I'm really working on this area. And not, even if you disapprove of that, I don't have to sweat it because I'm secure in who I am. So if you judge me or don't judge me or love me, hey, this is what I'm working on. It is what it is, right? And I can be authentic and true to who I am. And I feel like unless you truly own yourself and take responsibility for yourself, it's hard, it's more difficult to be authentic and to be real, and therefore a more effective leader, if you're not in touch with some of that stuff, some of the deeper stuff. And that stuff takes reflection time. It takes work and intention. Eric, thank you so much, man. You shared so many great practical principles and practices that people can use and apply today to become a better version of themselves. And I totally appreciate that. Here at EQ for Entrepreneurs and, just this emotional intelligence space, man, we love helping leaders and entrepreneurs navigate their lives and their businesses and their organizations by helping them grow their emotional health and their emotional intelligence. And I just appreciate your time.
That was great being here, man. It was fun.